All right. So we're here to talk about marketing without meta. Common theme. It either seems to be people hate social media, are really off social media in general, or they specifically are anti-meta and anti Mark Zuckerberg. So there may still be some elements, as I said, to your plan of social media. But the idea here is that we are going to, or I'm going to interest you into a way that you can consider your marketing plan without using meta products. So, a bit about me. I know some people know me already. Rain and Laura, I know you guys less well, but I've been working in marketing for 25 years. I know I don't look old enough, but I worked in tech for a long time. I have been freelancing for 11 years now. So freelancing and consulting in marketing for 11 years. And I now work one-on-one with clients, either I'm their marketing director, or in coaching them or helping them build a plan. And I've just launched something called the Smarter Marketing Club, which Colin is part of. And that is designed to just be kind of like your little sounding board, give you tips and point you in the right direction, be the little kind of like coach in the background for you to crack on and know what you're doing. So for anyone that doesn't know, I'm based on the south coast of the UK, in a seaside city of Portsmouth, which is very historical, years and years old. Henry VIII has a castle here, which I've taken Adele to. I mean, Henry VIII is no longer alive, obviously, but that's how old it is. So that's where I live. So what are we going to cover today? Are we going to talk about the problem with meta? We're going to talk about understanding where your people are if they're not on meta. We're going to talk about understanding your customer journey and where social fits, if at all, or doesn't anymore. And we're going to talk about creating your non-meta marketing plan. And when I say talk about it, you're going to do it. You're not just going to talk about it. So by the end of it, you should walk away with a plan. So the problem with meta, so many businesses feel stuck on, I think, Facebook and Instagram. In the past, it's been kind of an easy route to market, in effect, because there's been a mass audience there, and readily and freely available access to your potential customers through either Facebook or Instagram, and with organic social. But that is changing on a almost, weekly basis. I saw some stats last week about engagement on Instagram is down by like 28% year on year. So if you're seeing, there's a social media platform, a scheduling platform that did a huge study around Instagram specifically and organic content, and engagement is down 28% across the board. Average number of comments and engagement, if you've got a account of 1,000 to 10,000 people, is 3 comments. And so when you're in a situation like that, where Meta are not serving your content to your potential audience, you start to get frustrated, or you start to think, well, what the hell am I doing, right? In reality, if you're getting more than 3 comments and your engagement has stayed the same, you're probably doing pretty well. But you feel a bit like probably that you're at the mercy of the platforms, and you're thinking, how am I going to beat the algorithm? How am I going to get more people to see my content? Or how am I going to get the people that have in the past seen my content still see it? And so you've got this ever sort of like this relentless circle of despair, in effect, going on, because you feel a bit tied to it, but you don't really know what else to do. And so just relying, I always say to clients, don't rely on one platform. And certainly don't base your entire business off of the social platform. In fact, something I normally say to them is don't build your business on rented land, because at any moment, as you know, Facebook can just decide to close your profile down. They can decide to ban you. They can do anything they like. And you've got no way often of appealing that. And so that's a huge limitation. So what we want to do is for you to build a plan that you own and not one that you are renting, in effect. And I think there's also this challenge of the emotional toll of social media, right? Certainly, I've noticed a massive difference since, in the last couple of years, but certainly even since January, with everything that's going on with politics globally. Not, I mean, obviously, I know you guys are hugely affected in the US, but the impact of that is global, and it's just toxic, right? You just don't want to be there. Coupled with our wonderful Mr. Zuckerberg saying that he thinks that you know corporations need to be more masculine, and they've gone too far with diversity and all of that kind of stuff. It just gives you the ick. It gives me the ick, and I don't want to give money to them. I increasingly, I think that when you're only relying on Facebook or Instagram and organic social is dying, you're in a situation where potentially you've got to start thinking about media, paid media, and you just don't want to give them money, right? And your clients don't want to give them money, and your clients are increasingly feeling like, I don't want to be associated with these platforms. So you've got this double whammy of you're feeling really not happy about it, and your clients just aren't there, and they don't want to be there either. So on top of that, obviously, we've got the privacy and data issues that have been, there for a long time. But increasingly, I don't know if, as you know, you've only got to look at one thing on a website if you're researching something, and the next thing you've got all these adverts for something that you don't necessarily want, and then the amount of data that Facebook hold about you, and what they know about you. I mean, to an extent, some of it is sort of closing the stable door after the horse has bolted, but we can stop, right? We can stop, and we can stop them learning any more about us. So we've got all of these problems as individuals, and then you've got as business owners in trying to market your business out of this sort of silo of everyone just thinking, well, that's the way to find business, right? So the idea is that we take this problem, we take it head on, and we do something about it. So understand where your people are. If they're not on Facebook and they're not on Instagram, where are you going to find them? And short of it being, realizing that some of you have got local businesses where you might be gathering from local places, you can obviously do networking and things like that. But if we are thinking about the digital world, where can you go in order to find out where your people are? So a lot of the time you'll hear marketing people talk about buyer personas, and I often talk about audience personas, and it's a slight but subtle difference, because what we want to do is think about this in terms of it's not just someone that's going to buy, but also someone that might influence someone to buy. And I'm not necessarily talking about influencers in the sense of, Kim Kardashian as an extreme example, but someone that might be aware of your services, and somebody that might then promote your services, even if you don't, you haven't paid them to or anything like that. It's what's called amplifier personas. So what we need to do is think about the fact that you've got a buyer persona, and this would be, obviously, this is for if you are a slightly bigger business, but also as the business owner yourself. You've got someone that's specifically going to buy, right? And this is the characteristics and motivations behind your real customers. And then you've got what's called an amplifier persona. And that might be people that could potentially amplify your content out. This could be something like a podcast host. It could be somebody in your field where you can go and chat with them. Say, for instance, Rain, you've got a podcast, but you might go and promote your work, your podcast on someone else's podcast, right? So as you did with Adele, you came and did a talk with Adele in her group. We got to know who you were. We signed up to your podcast. In this sense, Adele would be your amplifier persona, who is going to take your message, your product, and take it out there. But she might be also a buyer persona, but she's an amplifier persona. And then you've got an attention persona, which is typically press, right? Or it could be competitors, but it's someone, or it's in journalists, analysts, people like that. This might not be so relevant. This can sometimes be for bigger businesses, but it's just to consider that you've not just got someone that's going to buy, you've got other people that could be promoting your business at the same time. So that's the context of it. And what you end up with is, although this is done as a tech founder, what you do is you end up with a situation in terms of what do they do, but where are they looking? Where can you look to find them in other places? And what I'm going to do is just show you a little bit of an example of how we find this data. So you basically find other places that other places that they might be hanging out, they might be reading. What websites are they looking at? Are they looking at Reddit? What press do they read? What podcast do they listen to? And then from that, you can then start to think about, how do you get not only to your buyer persona, but how do you get to your amplifier persona so that you can start to put your message out? If I show you as a little bit of an example, how we do this, and I'm going to get you guys to do this in a minute. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for a minute. I'm going to switch. Sorry, I'm going to switch what I'm sharing. Now, this is a tool that's called Spark Toro. There is a free version. And what it does, you can search by country, USA or the UK, and you can either search keywords, so something that someone who is one of your customers might be looking at. You can search for specific websites, and you can search for things that, like keywords that they might have in their bio. I will preface this by saying websites only works if you're a big company. Like, you've got to have a certain amount of visitors to your website in order for them to draw the data. But in terms of search keywords, you might be thinking, I've done this one already. So let me just say, someone might be searching for, who have we got here? I'm thinking now, Colin, document storage. Colin? Can't hear you, but that's okay. Document storage. He's looking in the UK. So you can perform a search, and what it's going to do is help you, hopefully, come up with some answers as to what websites they might visit, what are the keywords for things that they search. And this is a starting point for you building out a marketing plan that doesn't involve social, because you need to understand what they're searching for. You need to understand what other places they're going to visit, and you can rule some of them out, right? Like, we know that WH Smith is not a relevant one here, right? So I'm not saying that all the answers you get are exactly right, but what it will tell you is, if you're not looking at Facebook or Instagram as a platform that you want to use, it's going to tell you how much more likely they are to use another channel, right? So what's the audience affinity to here? So YouTube I've probably not got the search term quite right for Colin, but this might suggest that YouTube might be a good audience for Colin to consider looking at in terms of some marketing, right? And LinkedIn, which we know because he's got a professional audience. Also, they're more, Reddit is quite high as well in terms of you've got a 0.3, they're more, nearly 4% more likely to use Reddit than other people, right? Than the overall average overall. But what it also then does is tells you, oh, hang on. What it also then does is tells you is other accounts. I've used a really bad example because this is giving us random results here. But it starts to give you some other hidden gems where you might look in terms of, is there somewhere you can write a guest blog? Is there somewhere that you can reach out to in terms of a bit of promotion? And it also starts to tell you what search keywords you might want to consider as part of your SEO strategy. So what I'm going to, additionally, it tells you YouTube channels you might want to consider, podcasts that you might want to think about approaching if you can be a guest on there, and also subreddits. I don't know if anyone is familiar with Reddit, but it's quite an online community where all sorts of questions get asked. It's a real, you can also advertise on there if you want to, but there's subreddits about pretty much any topic. And the goal there is that you could start to join in the community. People see you as an expert and they'd start to discover who you are. So it's just working in a slightly different way, whereas social media is very much kind of like push in your face. This is much more about offering value, giving people answers to questions they might have. And this will come up with the subreddits that you could consider looking at. I'm going to show you one for photography because that I've previously done. This is a US one. So this is going to be, because I thought we were going to have a photographer on today, but he's not here. So, but it's not, it was an artist anyway. But anyway, so this starts to tell you what you might start to think about in terms of some content for your website or for YouTube, right? They're looking for answers around this, the audiences. It tells you that your audience here is more likely to be male than female. It might be how you, different words and terminology you use. Tells you what other websites they look at. So it might be that F-stoppers you might know that F-stoppers take guest blogs or guest participation, so you can start to look at that. It also then gives you some hidden gems of things you might not have heard about before, which could be a better way to go about it, because although it might have a smaller audience, you're going to have much more targeted people there. Also shows that people looking at photography are much more likely to be looking at YouTube. And as you can see, Reddit is still quite high, but they're not really on LinkedIn so much. So it's just, these numbers aren't massively different to the previous one, but it just gives you an indication of where you might look aside from Facebook and Instagram. Also then gives you these social accounts to consider looking at, and then also podcasts and things like that. So it might be that we know that this photography podcast accepts guest speakers. So you might be able to get on there and talk about your workflow and things like that. So this is a way of you doing some additional research outside of where am I going to find my people. So I'm sorry about that, everybody. It's just decided that halfway through. I want to go on to the next section. So what I want to talk about is the customer journey and where social fits, but how that's not the complete picture. Because a lot of the time when I start talking to people, social media is pretty much their entire marketing strategy. And so, which I get, right? Because it's been easy, it's free, you've got easy access to your potential clients. But what it's meant is this is over-reliance on social media as part of your marketing plan, and sort of other bits that maybe you don't understand as well. and maybe seem a bit more challenging have been ignored, or just pushed to one side. And so what we're going to do is talk about the fact that social media is not the whole strategy, and you need to think about the customer journey overall, and something I touched on earlier, which is owned media. And that is essentially making sure that you focus on aspects that you own, you control, and no one can take away from you, right, on a whim. So that's where this is coming from. I think I've got a question in the chat. I need to just check that. Oh, thank you, Ryan. All right, so what's the customer journey? Right, so your marketing plan needs to essentially have 8 stages to it, right? And we start at an awareness, and I've got a template for you all to fill out, by the way, after this. So you're going to go away with this in a template. So where you start is you're trying to get awareness for your business. So this is where you've got everybody out in the ether. They don't know anything about you, and you're trying to get awareness. And what you need at awareness stage is you need something to drive traffic or people to your website so that they become aware of you. So that we go from unaware here at the start to aware of who you are. Once they know who you are and they start to see, maybe they've Googled and they've come across your website, you then want to go on to the engagement stage. And that's where you like have a conversation, start to have a conversation with you. Now, typically, this is where you'd have social media, right? You'd have conversations, you'd have them commenting on posts and things like that, but it's not exclusive to social media is not exclusive to here. Here's where you can have Reddit, you could have YouTube, you could have blogs that they might comment on. You know, the point is that they're starting to take notice, and rather than just be passively aware, they're starting to seek out what you're doing, what you're putting out there into the world, and they're starting to take more note of it. And subscribe is where they physically raise their hand and go, yeah, I want a bit more information from that person. I'm happy to give them my email address, and I'm happy to communicate with that person directly. And so what we do here is we have to have something here that basically sweetens the pot for them to give you an email address, so that we can have an initial conversion, which we measure in either time or money, because it's different for every single business about how you can measure a conversion. For my business, say, I might offer something free, like a template or prompts for ChatGPT, and I offer them for free. And so someone happily gives me their email address, I send them to them, and I've converted them with that first interaction, which they've spent time on. It's free. Or in the case of this workshop, it's a small initial investment, £15, right? So you want to convert them with something. Now, I appreciate that's more difficult for some of you because of the businesses that you've got, but you can do it with money off. I try to avoid doing it with money off, right? It could be a meditation, right? A free meditation. It could be, for Adele, it could be your presentation about astrology, right? Free of charge. You could do a 10-minute intro. It could be something like that. So the point is that you want to get their email address so that you can convert them, and they become really excited by that initial first interaction, and that then allows you to scale through your product offerings with what you've got, products or service offerings. So you can then say to them, hey, you enjoyed that first initial thing. Would you also like this? Would you like to spend an hour on would you like a private lesson? Would you like a private reading? Would you, you take my point, you scale through your product or service offerings. They then become super happy. They become advocates in an unpaid way. They give a testimonial. They say, oh, this is the best thing I've ever, this is brilliant. I really highly recommend this person. And then promote is the final stage, where you actively kind of like engage in a program of almost like affiliates. Like for every customer you bring me, I'll give you some money back. That's a more formal program. And sometimes we can leave that out, right? It might not be relevant to your business. Now, what I typically find is people do loads of work on awareness, and they do a really good job of that sort of excitement of initial transaction, and they do a pretty good job of scaling through their offerings, but they miss this bit out here. And so what they do is they go from, hey, this is who I am, do you want to buy my stuff? And they miss all this stuff out in the middle. And so what we need to do is build a plan that takes you through these stages, but that this stage doesn't have meta in it, because that's the easy way out, right? So what you've got here is typically the sort of types of activities you would see in your customer value journey. And how this works is, if you want to think about it in terms of a funnel, because you hear people talking about funnels all the time, this is the top of the funnel, this is the middle, and then this is the bottom. So it looks like this. And how I've set it out is that you've got, this is the type of activities you would do at the top of the funnel. So blog posts, social media, but we're not doing that. You've got infographics, different places you can share them. This is the kind of stuff that you would do at the top of funnel, at the middle, and then at the bottom, right? And so that takes you through your customer journey. And so I just want to talk a bit about the kinds of activities that you could do in this journey without having social media. And if I can impress upon you one thing, it is get your email marketing sorted. I don't know how many of you currently do regular emails. Laura's kind of going, maybe. I cannot press upon you enough. This is owned. You 100% own this, right? You can get your message out. You can say what you want. You can do it as regularly or as irregularly as you like. But I would say to you that email needs to be a massive part of your engagement process. Now, obviously, you can only do that once people have subscribed. So, you know, that is really important aspect of your marketing plan. And then you've got SEO and blogging will help you get found organically without using social and without using ads on Meta. So SEO is another really important aspect of it. It used to be that people saw it as a bit of a dark art, but it isn't really. What it is what are your customers, what are your clients wanting to know about you? What are they searching for? And answer those questions. And if you've got a well-optimized website, which Laura and Rain sounds like you guys have, which is really good. And I know Colin, yours is pretty good as well. That will help you a lot. But you just need to make sure that from a technical point of view, it's fast, images load quickly and all of that. But really think about the content that you put out there. Now, if you're more of a practitioner where you've got because Laura, I think you're a yoga teacher, aren't you? Is that right? Yeah, I appreciate that that's potentially more challenging, but there's definitely things you can do from an SEO point of view by using video blogging, and also whatever you put on your website, there's definitely stuff that you can do, but you're not necessarily doing blogging in the traditional sense of I'm going to write a blog about this, right? But there's definitely things that you could do around that. So podcasting and speaking, definitely, if you can, try and look into this. Where can you go and speak in other people's communities, on other people's podcasts that get you known? I mean, that's how I was introduced to Rain, for sure. So have a think about that. And that's why that Spark Turo exercise is a really good exercise to do, because even if you know some of the top podcasts, you might not necessarily be able to get on them. You might find some little secret hidden gems that you might want to start thinking about. And always think a bit sort of laterally as well. Don't necessarily think only in your niche. Think about other ways that you could get out, maybe on a business podcast, Rain, about, you know, the things that you're doing around meditation and everything. That's a really important message for lot of the business podcasts are out there that are run by lots of different people. So there's different ways of doing it. Online communities is massive, right? What we're seeing is that people are going away from mass social media to more niche, closed communities. And that's why finding Slack communities, finding Discord or Mighty Network communities or Reddits or things like that, they're in closed communities that are people that would be your paying clients is key. And I would say, I'm saying you need to do this about everything, but if you're not spending your time on social, you can be doing this. Yes, Substack is absolutely on this list, Adele. So online communities, and in terms of blogging, it would be there. So because not only, and something like Medium. So if you're blogging on your own website, but you want to get your message out further, consider putting your blog, and it doesn't matter if it's the same thing, on a Substack. Consider putting it on a Medium as well, because they start to recommend your content to other people as well. So yes, now it's about, are you getting out to the audiences that are relevant for you, right? And obviously, as you may or may not know, on Substack, you can be a free Substack, or you can start to do paid as well. So you can start to generate some revenue from Substack as well if you want to. You can offer it at like $2 or $3 or whatever the subscription is, but there's different ways to monetize what you're bringing in as well. So don't think of it just in terms of this is all free stuff where you're giving. There is ways, like on things like YouTube, you can monetize your YouTube channel. There's different things that you can do that start to actually get you back some of the time that you've invested, right? Obviously partnerships and PR, I think PR is a really key one, but it is quite difficult and time consuming to do, and you're less control over it because you're kind of at the whim of journalists and things like that. But there is a service that I occasionally use and it works in the US as well as the UK, and I'll send you the link, and it's called Fat Joe, which is weird. But they offer something that's called like a niche outreach and a blogger outreach. And you can actually pay to get a blog posted on fairly well-known but niche articles if you want, websites if you want to. So it's a way of kind of like shortcutting this process. So I've used that a couple of times with clients, and it's worked quite well because you can pick your niche, and you can pick what you want to say, and Fat Joe will do the outreach and get it placed for you. So again, I'll send that out to you afterwards, so you've got the information and you can have a look at it and see if it works. And then, of course, you've got things like referral and loyalty programs that you might want to look at that start to, bring you new people in. So if you've got an existing customer base, you say, or if you recommend 3 people to me, you're going to get something for free, or I'm going to give you some money back or whatever. So you can always do referral and loyalty programs. But on money back stuff, I try and avoid it as much as possible because I'm aware that it's taking out of your pocket. But at the same time, sometimes it works, right? So there's some ideas that you can put into it. So the whole thing is, I've got to repeat there. The whole thing is keep it simple, and consistency is key. And the whole point of this with any of these activities. So what I'm going to say is, even if you start with one of these, maybe just start with one and gradually build up the other elements of your marketing plan. Don't try and do it all at once. And the key to it is thinking about which is the gap that you need to fill first, and make sure that that is fixed before you do the other thing. Now, typically what everybody does is they start with traffic and they go, I've got to get more and more and more traffic to my website. I need to do the traffic generating activities, but they haven't plugged the gaps further up. So they do all the good work of doing the traffic, and then they can't capture the people. So we work backwards. The goal is that we're going to have one thing at every stage of this journey. So I taught you through this. This is how it works, right? So these are examples up here of the type of activity that you can do in this journey. So SEO, you might look at Pinterest. If you're artist or Adele, there's loads of astrology stuff on Pinterest that you might want to start putting on there, right? PR, affiliates, online advertising. I don't need to read it. These are the things. In terms of lead magnet, this is the subscribe stage. What can you offer? These are some examples. What can you think about in terms of things that you could offer at the subscribe stage in order to get people in, to then get them through to the excite? So these are examples. They're not exhaustive, but this is essentially my plan, what I do. So I work on SEO. So I create SEO optimized blog posts, and I've SEO optimized my website. If you Google marketing consultant Hampshire, I think it is, I come up top, right? So that's taken time, and I also use Pinterest, because this used to say Facebook and Instagram. It doesn't anymore. It says Pinterest. So I have recently switched. I'm in the middle of an exercise, so I'm doing some work on Pinterest and how I can get to my ideal audience. I think it would work equally well. Probably, Colin, you're probably the only one it would work for, Pinterest, but I think it would work equally well for everybody else if you don't use Pinterest. It is not a social platform. It is a visual search engine. So you're optimizing your content exactly the same way. If you've got a blog, you just make a visual representation of it with images. You optimize it with keywords. You do all the same stuff. You just do it visually on Pinterest. It can work super well. Importantly, you can also use video on there. If you've got some video, maybe of you doing some work, Laura, I don't know whether you share video and you use video as a sort of part of your promotion. You can put video pins on Pinterest, so it could work super well. I would encourage you all to look at that. I actually haven't updated this. That should not have Instagram on there. That should just have LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn for engagement, and that's how I mainly engage, because I'm mainly a B2B audience. I've got some free things that people can sign up to. I've got an ebook about shiny objects and how people can just like jump from one thing to another with marketing. I've got some affirmation cards that are helpful for people who just are feeling all the bad stuff about marketing. It's a bit of an encouraging thing. I do, you can do written or video in terms of your lead content. Like, what's the content you're putting out all the time? For here, mine is written, and then you repurpose it. Now, repurposing is a whole other thing that we could spend hours on, but I have got a blog on my website that's about how you repurpose content, so I'll send it to you, so you can take a look. And then this takes you through here. So this is the actual what happens in real time. You go, I've got technical SEO on page and off page. I've got social ads maybe on Pinterest, and I'm using Pinterest. I post regularly on social, LinkedIn 3 times a week, but that equally could say subreddit, it could say Substack, it could say Medium. That engagement could be there. I've got lead magnets that I use. I'm now doing a podcast. You go through here, and then I get to my nurture is through a fortnightly email that I send out regularly. So I convert people through my fortnightly email, my welcome series, and then I do post-purchase follow-up, customer case studies and things like that. You get the picture, right? And then I've just added down here little tools that you might need along the way, just as a little help so that you can see what you might need. So your next task is to start thinking about maybe just pulling from up here, or what you know you already do, and fit it into one of these and figure out what the basis of your simple 8-step marketing plan is going to be. Any questions? Is it clear? Laura's yawning. That's never good. Claire, are you okay?
I would suspect for people who, well, at least for me, I live in Excel, that this is kind of overwhelming.
Okay.
So help us like start, I guess. Like,
okay.
My brain is spinning.
Okay. All right. So let's go. All right. So Adele, let's talk about you. So we're thinking about your thinking guides,
Thinking girls. Yeah.
thinking girls guide. So you need to get people, how do you, we need to get people knowing about what that is, right? How
So
are we going
first,
to get traffic to your, once you've got a website, which I know you don't yet have, but once we've got a website, how are we going to get people to your website?
I'm thinking after looking at this thing, it's probably YouTube, to be honest, to start with.
Yeah,
Um, so I would do 5 minute what's on my mind videos about different ways to
yeah,
think about life.
yeah,
And then I did like the idea of the quiz or putting
yeah,
out like that affirmation thing about, in ancient civilizations, women were revered and these leaders and doing like a Friday affirmation of the goddess or something like that. I don't know. Just
yeah,
trying to think
yeah.
of,
I think a quiz is a really good idea, and there's different ways that you can do quizzes. There's softwares that you can buy, you can use,
okay,
where you can get people to ask a couple of questions, and then you can give them a "you are this" type thing, right? It's a bit
okay,
like prescriptive, but I think a quiz would work really well for you.
okay,
And that's your lead magnet, and then you've got to think about what's your YouTube sits here. Actually, your YouTube sits here, doesn't sit in traffic. That is therefore SEO. So your YouTube sits here, your videos, this is your ongoing. So you've got initially you've said, oh yeah, I like the idea of that. I want to know who I am. Mate, what's your sun sign? I don't know if you could do that, right? What's your sun sign? Let's say, as I now know, mine is Libra, as is everything. And then you've got them into your world, right? So what are you going to do to keep them interested? So you're going to do little 5 minute weekly YouTubes, but you're also going to email them. Yeah,
yep,
right. You're
okay,
not going to do anything else. You're going to email them, but you might repurpose your videos into blogs or a Substack, right? You
okay,
might take a transcript of your YouTube video, turn it into a blog, put it on your website, and you might post it on Substack, which is another way of getting the feelers out. All the
okay,
while, you're optimizing your website SEO, and I am going to encourage you to do Pinterest there, right?
here,
You can have repeat things in different areas. So in your engagement, you might have YouTube because people leave comments, right? Right? YouTube comments. You might have Substack where people are commenting, right? There's different ways you can do it. You don't have to have different things at different stages. You just need to be aware where they fit in the stage, right? And then you need to think about what's your products that you're selling, right? So you've got the quiz, you've got them into your ecosystem. What are you going to convert them with? You're going to do your email, but what are you actually going to offer them, right, in order to convert? And that, I think, where you obviously need to do the work.
yep,
What are they going to pay? How are you going to do it? And then you can ask for testimonials. This is pretty easy, right? Does that
okay,
help? Does that
yes,
help?
yeah, it
Does that help
does.
everybody understand how we build it out? Keep it simple. Kiss. Oh, I've
I
got comments,
filling
questions.
things out, and I think there are so many pieces. But I'm confused about the lead magnet versus lead content. Lead magnet leads them in. Lead content is different than
Keeps,
leader.
yeah. So lead magnet is the thing that gets them to raise their hand, like say, yep, here's my email address, gets them into your world. Lead content is the thing that you build on an ongoing basis. It attracts and connects with your ideal paying customer. So the thing that you're producing on an ongoing basis, mine happens to be a blog and a podcast. Yours might be, what do you do on a regular basis?
Semi-regularly blogs, semi-regularly send emails. So
Okay.
I'm
So yours, in that case, let's clear this out. Yours would be, do you have anything that gets people into your world with a email address, for them to say,
Yeah, I have a
Yes.
lead magnet that frankly I feel a little meh about, but it's been up for a few years and it seems to convert some people.
Okay, so what is that?
It's a PDF and mini, it's like a self-care PDF and mini course. It's actually it's what it's like 6 or 7 video series.
Perfect. If it's working, right, that's fine. All right, so we keep that there. And so they've raised their hand. And what do you then send them on an ongoing basis? What do you do on an ongoing basis? You said blogs, and what was the other thing?
Yeah, the blogs and emails sort of feed each other. So if I'm writing blog posts, I will put bits of them in the email now and then. Hey, here's this thing I wrote that you might read. The email might also contain, like, sometimes I do podcast appearances, right? So like I don't know which one goes to the other.
Yeah. Okay. So your lead content is blogs. That's what you're producing on a regular basis, right? That's the thing that keeps people aware of what you're doing. It keeps getting your message out. It positions you, your point of view, what you think about your authenticity. But the way you deliver it is through email, right? That's the way you deliver it. And that's how ultimately you're going to convert people. So email is your conversion process and blogs is your lead content, which you could then repurpose into multiple things. So you could repurpose a blog into what do you blog about?
Trauma recovery, sometimes yoga topics, sometimes yeah, those are the sort of biggest keywords.
Okay. So do you do, it's just written content that you do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let me think about this. You could repurpose that into well, you would, what you can do is, but we're not going to be using social. I would suggest that you repurpose into Pinterest graphics. Yeah. And you use Pinterest over here as your traffic, right? And search. So the things that people are searching for in terms of maybe trauma recovery, you've got your blog where you're writing about those topics, you create some nice pins, you repurpose that into some nice pins using Canva or whatever, and you repurpose it and you put it into Pinterest, right? So it just all sort of mixes together. Yeah. And you can then
So in a way, the graphics would be a little bit like what Laura prepared for our session, like to show the picture of what she's blogging about. Is that, when she did it, when she explained to us what somatic experiencing was, she could use some of those graphics on Pinterest.
Absolutely.
It's not like recreating or creating new necessarily.
No,
Hey,
definitely not.
those dots, Adele.
Do what?
No.
Do what?
Thanks for connecting those dots.
Yeah, I was just in my head trying to get there on how you would.
Yeah.
You can already use stuff that you built already that are beautiful.
Oh my God, please don't go. Yes, absolutely. Reuse anything you've got. Don't go recreating the wheel every time. Go back and look at blogs you've already got that are doing the work for you. Think about how you can create them into different formats, repurpose it, put it on Pinterest to drive traffic. Keep promoting your PDF self-care and mini course through SEO, through Pinterest. Promote it through your blogs. Use email and testimonial here, right? That's how you do it. And here, you're not going to have social platform necessarily, but you could have Substack or you could have Medium, right? You could have one of those different platforms, these new emerging ones. Or if you're on Blue Sky, you could put that there. I don't know if you are, right? It doesn't have to be, these are old ones. I mean, bloody Clubhouse doesn't even exist anymore. It's gone. So, different things that you can do there. The point being, have a maximum of 2 at each stage, but really just keep it simple and think about it being all supporting each other at every stage of the journey.